Hello, everyone, and welcome back to What's Your Favorite Scary Story? Now, unfortunately, Marlene was not able to make it this week, so it is just going to be me today. But don't worry, I still have a very interesting story for all of you. Now, before I get into things, as always, you guys know what to do. If you want to hear me talk about a certain topic on the podcast, please send it in. Send in all your ideas, everything you've got, and also personal stories too. I do want to do an episode on people's personal stories because they're just always the most interesting to me, thinking about people writing out what they've experienced. It just makes it so much more real and interesting. So, of course, you're going to send those to whatsyourfavoritescarystory@gmail.com. All right, so let's just get into today's topic. This is another suggestion from my mother, Diane. Thank you, Mom. Very appreciated. So today's topic is going to be on Alcatraz. So pretty much everyone knows that Alcatraz was a prison on an island off of San Francisco. It's known for just being a big rock of an island that's impossible to escape from. But it all goes back to 1775 when a Spanish explorer, Juan Manuel de Ayala, chartered the San Francisco Bay. The island was originally used by various California coastal tribes as an area for gathering foods and as a place for isolation for tribal members who had violated tribal laws. The island was named La Isla de los Alcatrazes, which translates to the Island of Pelicans. And again, I'm obviously not great with pronouncing things. I apologize. I do not have Marlene to help me. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. So between 1850 and 1907, Alcatraz was the most powerful fortress west of the Mississippi. The fortress was originally intended to guard against foreign invasion of San Francisco, which had boomed during the gold rush. Alcatraz also played an important role in the Civil War, protecting San Francisco from Confederate raiders. In 1907, the fortress became an official military prison, and in 1934, a federal penitentiary. The prison stopped operating in 1963, and between 1969 and 1971, Alcatraz was occupied by Native American groups advocating for self-determination. It is now maintained by the National Park Service and is open to visitors. So that was just kind of a basic, quick overview of the history of Alcatraz. But now we are going to get into some of the sadder history. So here are some interesting and not so fun facts about Alcatraz. So as many of you know, Al Capone was a prisoner at Alcatraz. So while Capone was incarcerated in Atlanta, he was able to bribe the guards to get special treatment and pretty much remain very comfortable. But when he got to Alcatraz, everything changed for him. The conditions were so harsh, he reportedly told his warden, "It looks like Alcatraz has got me licked." All right, now Alcatraz was the only prison at the time to offer hot showers to the prisoners, but it wasn't really meant to be a luxury for them, but rather a precaution. They believed that if the prisoners were used to the hot water, they wouldn't be able to handle the ice-cold waters of the bay, and they would be deterred from attempting escape. All right, so for those of you who don't know, Alcatraz is nicknamed the Rock because it is literally just a big rock. There's no flowing water, little vegetation, and no beaches. It's in fact so rocky that the first surveyor didn't think the land was fit to build on. Obviously, a great place for a prison. So the prisoners were allowed warden-approved visitors once a month, but these visitations had extremely strict rules. There was to be no physical contact, their conversations were closely monitored, and they weren't allowed to talk about current events or prison life. If any of these rules were violated, They were not allowed to have any more visitors. So in the prison's 29-year history, no prisoner has ever successfully escaped, at least not one they have on record. In total, 36 men have tried to escape. 23 of them were recaptured, 6 were shot and killed, and the remaining 5 were listed as missing and are assumed to have drowned. But nobody knows for sure, so who knows? They might have made it out. So, naturally, some prisoners went insane during their stay at Alcatraz. A few of those people came to the point of self-mutilation and taking their own lives. One prisoner chopped off all of the fingers on his left hand, and another tried to slash his throat with eyeglasses, only to be killed during an escape attempt. So the cells in Alcatraz were barely bigger than a closet, measuring 5 feet by 9 feet. If you stretched out your arms, you could touch both walls. They were only big enough to hold a sink, a toilet, and a cot. Now, Alcatraz has been dubbed as the most haunted prison in the country. And actually, the original native inhabitants of the island claimed to have encountered evil spirits even before it became a prison. So obviously, some of the inmates did pass away on the island, as we've already discussed. 8 of them were murdered by other inmates. 5 people took their own lives, and 15 people died of natural causes. So Alcatraz has been known as the place where all the worst sort of criminals go, but it was more so for the criminals that they were just hard to control, and they were trying to get back under control. So there were actually no set sentences for these prisoners once they were sent to Alcatraz, and they never just got released back into society from Alcatraz. They would generally spend 6 to 8 years there, or however long it took to get them in line, and then they would be transferred back to their original prison to finish out their sentence. All right, now sometime in the 1940s, a prisoner was locked in his cell, and he was screaming all night that something with glowing eyes was trying to kill him. The next morning, he was found strangled to death in his cell. It was never determined who did that to him. So there was actually a battle of Alcatraz, which was called the Alcatraz Blastout. It took place between May 2nd and May 4th of 1946. 6 prisoners were able to get a hold of weapons and cell house keys, but there was an issue with their plan. The keys they stole did not have the one for the recreation yard door, and the guards had learned of their plan. So in total, 18 officers were injured during the battle, and the Marines actually had to come in to help get things back under control. By the end of things, 3 of the 6 prisoners who started the battle were dead. 2 of them were tried for murder and sentenced to death by gas chamber. And the last one, who was only 19 at the time, received a second life sentence. Okay, so I have one last fact for you, and this is probably one of the most depressing ones. There was an extra harsh punishment for prisoners who refused to follow the rules of the prison. Cell Block D was known as the worst place to end up, and the 5 cells at the end of Block D were known as the hole. There was almost no light in the hole, the cells were kept colder than usual, and the inmates that were sent there were often subject to brutal beatings and starvation. So there was one cell at the end of the hole that became known as the strip cell. This cell was reserved for the worst of the worst. Before a prisoner was put in there, they would have all of their clothes stripped. There were no lights in the cell and no amenities at all. All of the other cells in the hole at least had a sink, but the only thing in the strip cell was a hole in the floor to be used as a toilet. All right, now it is time for everyone's favorite part, the hauntings. So one of the most haunted places in the prison is cell 14D. This is where that man was supposedly found strangled to death. Visitors report feeling coldness enveloping the room, hearing the sounds of chains and muffled knocks on the wall, and some guards have seen a ghostly figure in the cell. In the rest of the cell blocks, A, B, and C, visitors will often hear crying and moaning, and they also had a medium come into these blocks, and she reported encountering a malevolent spirit named Butcher. And there was actually a man who was assassinated at the prison back in the 1940s, whose nickname was Butcher. So a fun fact that I didn't mention in my list back there is that during Al Capone's stay at Alcatraz, he took to playing the banjo. But due to fear of being caught, he would play in the showers, and his banjo music can still be heard in there today. And another fun fact is that there is a lighthouse on the island, which was actually the first lighthouse on the West Coast, so that's pretty cool. But its first keeper, James A. King, was unfortunately found dead under mysterious circumstances. He can sometimes be heard making strange noises and is known to cause unexplained events around the area. Another well-known spirit is called the Lady in Green. This woman is often seen in the washroom of the former apartment of the warden. She is thought to have been the wife of the prison warden who committed suicide on the island while her husband was working. So one more famous ghost is that of the Birdman of Alcatraz. His real name was Robert Stroud, and he spent more than 17 years in solitary confinement at Alcatraz for murdering a prison guard at another facility where he was incarcerated. Since he had so much time to himself, he ended up raising birds in his cell somehow, and he became an expert in ornithology, which is the study of birds. His spirit is said to haunt the island, especially in the former hospital. So it is time for a few personal stories, which are always my favorite part. So even though my mom did suggest this topic, she didn't have any personal stories herself. I know she's been there. I actually went there with her and my dad when I was a kid, and I definitely did not appreciate it like I would today. So I'm hoping I'm able to go back someday. But that doesn't mean I don't have any stories for you. And actually, to kick things off, here are 5 quick experiences from inmates of the prison. So our first experience is actually from the Birdman, Robert Stroud. So he described his experience as a living death. He claimed to hear strange sounds and voices in his cell and said that he often felt like he was being watched. Next, we hear from a man named William G. Baker. He described the prison as a place of suffering. He claimed that he heard ghostly cries of men that had died at the prison, and he said that he felt a constant sense of dread during his time there. So a man named Jim Quillen was only there for a short 3 years, but he described his time as a living nightmare. He said he saw the ghost of a former inmate who had been killed in the laundry room. He also reported hearing strange moaning and groaning sounds coming from the walls. So next we have Henry Young, who was actually the subject of the movie Murder in the First. I have not looked into that, but I am definitely going to. But he spent 3 years in solitary confinement and claimed that he was visited by the ghost of Rufus McCain, a fellow inmate who had been killed. He said that he saw this ghost several times and even had conversations with him. And lastly, we have Frank Weatherman. He actually wrote a book called My 12 Years at Alcatraz. In this book, he described the prison as a place of evil. He claimed that he heard ghostly footsteps in the halls and saw the ghostly figure of a former guard who had died on the island. All right, so those are all of the stories I have from the inmates for you. Now, obviously, I know the way it sounds, it could just be these men being in this prison for such a long time, trapped on an island, maybe starting to lose their sanity. But you never know. I mean, like I mentioned before, the original native inhabitants of the island, they said they encountered evil spirits. So it's not unlikely that the prisoners experienced them too. But here are a few more stories I found on the internet. So a woman and her husband had gone on the night tour at Alcatraz. They said nothing eventful happened on the boat ride to the island, nor on the tour itself. But right before it was time for them to get back on the boat and leave, the woman decided to go use the restroom. Big mistake, apparently. Of course, the bathrooms were out of the way in a little separate building that's down a curvy path that's all in the dark. She said as she was walking by some bushes, she heard a very distinct and very sinister laugh. She was positive that there was no other living soul there. She said that she definitely felt that this was an entity and it wanted to scare her. So next, we have a man who was one of the tour guides, and apparently he was a big skeptic. And I actually saw online, I don't remember this from my tour because I was like 8, but apparently the tour guides and just everyone that works there really push that this place isn't haunted, which I feel like, nowadays everybody just wants to make money. I apologize, that is my cat, and he wants to play with his toy, but Mom is busy right now. I'm sorry, Binks. But anyways, yeah, you'd think that they would push the whole haunted thing because they could obviously make a whole bunch of money off of it. I think they do something for like Halloween there, but I haven't actually looked at the website recently. But yeah, everything I was reading online, like on Reddit, they just all said that all the tour guides were really pushing that it wasn't haunted. But anyways, I digress. This tour guide, he was a big skeptic. He was out giving a tour, and he heard a woman sobbing, and he heard it like it was in the walls of the dungeon, which also, I didn't know this place had a dungeon, so I don't know why I haven't looked that up yet, but I'm definitely going to after this. There was definitely nobody in the area that could be doing it, and right afterwards, there was a huge gust of wind that went through the entire crowd of people and gave everyone a terrifying chill. So this next story I found, I have never heard of it, but it seems like it's one of the most well-known stories of Alcatraz, and I really liked how it was told, so this is all going to be a direct quote. When Sheila Sillery Wash, who was visiting Alcatraz from the UK with her partner Paul Rice, decided to take a photo of one of the empty prison cells, she didn't expect to see a woman's face staring back at her. There had been no one visible in the cell when she snapped the picture. They had tried to rationalize it away, thinking it had maybe just been a reflection of Sheila herself in the photo. Only as they looked more closely, they could tell that that woman in the photo was wearing 1930s era clothing and most definitely was not Sheila. No one knows who the ghost woman caught on camera is or why she'd still be hanging around Alcatraz, but it's presumed to be the family member of a former inmate. Whoever she was, she scared the British visitors pretty good and reignited the rumors of the famously haunted former prison. So I did look up this photo, and if it's real, this is the most convincing photo of a ghost I've ever seen. It genuinely looks like there is a straight up person there. So I will 100% be uploading that to Instagram, and you guys can all tell me what you think. Obviously, it could have been doctored and just, put out as a publicity thing or just to try and make money. But if it's real, it's freaking creepy, man. That's a ghost and it looks like a person. But yeah, that is where we end. And that is the story of Alcatraz. I hope you guys liked that one. It was a good suggestion from my mom. I would have never thought of that for some reason, but it was a really interesting story. So thank you, Mom. But yeah, I love all the stories about ghosts. I'm thinking maybe in the next couple of ones we can, try something different. Maybe get into cryptids a little bit. That would be cool. Or aliens. I have not touched on aliens yet, and I would love to do something on them. So if there are any stories that you guys know regarding anything like that, please send them my way. Just a reminder, I literally can't do this podcast without your guys' suggestions. So if you want to keep hearing more episodes, you're going to need to send me your ideas, please. Just a reminder, I'm pretty sure everyone already knows, but please send those to whatsyourfavoritescarystory@gmail.com. Oh, and please respond to the poll at the end of this. I'm not trying to beg you guys to get me a Patreon going. I just want to know if it's something you would be interested in, because like I said, it's just going to be so much work. But if it's something you guys would be interested in, I would love to do that for you. And I would love it because I would learn so much while doing it too. So please just answer my poll. You can give whatever answer you want. I just want the feedback. But yeah, that is all I have for you guys this week. Hopefully next week I will be back with Marlene, and we will be back with another scary story. Stay spooky.